On Mother's Day, I got a box from my daughter. No card, no message, just a pink ribbon tied too tight. My husband looked at it for 3 seconds and said, "Don't open it." I laughed. Then I looked closer. There were holes in the sides, tiny, deliberate, breathing holes. And then I heard it, a hiss, a slow, hungry hiss. I froze, not because I was scared of what was inside, but because for the first time in my life, I truly saw what my daughter thought of me. I didn't open it. I walked to the phone instead. 10 minutes later, the police were on my porch, on Mother's Day. I'm about to share something that tore me open. But before I do, can you say hi in the comments or tell me where you're from? I love hearing how far my story reached. It's always good to know I'm not alone in this. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. If this story moves you even just a little, I hope you'll consider subscribing to this channel. Not just for me, but for every mother who's been taken for granted, every parent whose love was mistaken for weakness. My name is Margot Ellery. I'm 66 years old. And this is the day I stopped being silent. I woke up that morning before the sun had fully cleared the Blue Ridge ridges outside Asheville. The silence in the house was complete, the kind that either soothes or suffocates, depending on your state of mind. For me, it was the latter. There was no ping from my phone. No happy Mother's Day from Aubrey, not even the lazy chirp of a voicemail, no doorbell, no flowers left on the porch, just silence. I made my way to the kitchen, the house slippers scuffing along the hardwood floors I'd scrubbed the night before. I brewed coffee, our usual dark roast French press, and set out 2 mugs, one for me, one for Drexler. He wasn't home yet, out on his early run. Always disciplined, always returning right when I need him, though I rarely say so. Across the street, the neighbors were already stringing balloons at the garden commons. I could hear the faint thud of folding tables being unfolded and the clatter of chairs being set up. They do this every year, a little community potluck store-bought casseroles in foil trays, plastic forks, juice boxes for the kids. I'd been invited, twice. I said I wasn't feeling well. I wasn't lying, but I wasn't exactly sick either. I sat down at the table, the steam rising from my cup. I stared at the calendar hung crooked on the fridge. Mother's Day circled in green marker. A note scribbled in Aubrey's handwriting from years ago, still faintly visible underneath Mom's Day. No dishes today? I smiled, but it was the kind that left a sting in the corners of my eyes. There was a year long ago when she made me a card. Construction paper, glitter, a poorly cut out heart glued to the front. It said in bright red crayon, "I love you more than TV." I'd kept that card in my sock drawer for over a decade. Somewhere between her first credit card and her second divorce, the handmade card stopped coming. Now, on the rare occasions she remembered the date, I'd get a text. Sometimes at midnight, sometimes the next day, often not at all. Drexler came in through the back door, sweaty and flushed, already peeling off his windbreaker. "Beautiful morning," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "Smells like coffee." I gave him a half smile. He noticed. He always does. "Did she call?" He asked, not needing to specify who. "No," I said. "Maybe later." We sipped in silence. He talked about his route through the trails, how the early bloom on the dogwoods was holding longer this year. I nodded. I stirred my coffee twice, though I never take sugar. I just needed to do something with my hands. By mid-morning, I'd busied myself in the garden out back. The tomato starters needed repotting. It was the only place I could go and not think too loudly. Drexler was inside fixing the screen door. The breeze was perfect, soft and warm, the kind of breeze that makes you believe everything's fine even when it's not. I came back to the front porch just before noon, and that's when I saw it. Sitting neatly on the welcome mat like it had been placed with intention. A gift box. It was wrapped in pale pink paper tied with a ribbon that looked too perfect to be machine-made. There was no name, no card, no courier truck had passed that I could recall. But the color, the bow, it screamed Aubrey. This was her style, dramatic but polished, like she wanted you to notice but not ask questions. I hesitated. My fingers brushed the edge of the ribbon. Then Drexler stepped out behind me. "What's that?" he asked, drying his hands on a dish towel. "I don't know, no tag. But it looks like maybe from her." He moved past me and crouched down. I watched his face change soft curiosity, hardening into something else. Concern. Focus. I'd seen that expression before back when he was still in the field. He pointed to the side of the box. "Don't open it." I frowned. "Why not?" "Can't you see?" he said, voice low. I bent down. He tapped just above a seam. That's when I noticed them pinholes. 4, maybe 5, punched clean through the cardboard. Breathing holes. My stomach dropped. A chill rose up my spine so fast it made my neck prickle. I pulled my hand back like it had touched fire, and for the first time on any Mother's Day, I felt afraid. We didn't touch the box after that. Drexler slid it onto an old metal tray from the garage and carried it into the laundry room, setting it gently beside the washer. He closed the door behind us and flipped the lock like instinct. I stood a few steps back, my arms crossed, as if that would protect me from whatever was inside. He leaned in close, pressing his ear toward the side. "There's movement," he muttered. I strained to hear. For a second, there was nothing. Then faint, almost imagined a light rustle, like tissue paper being disturbed, then quiet again. My mind was spinning. It could be anything. A prank, a petty sick joke. But who sends something like that without a name? And on Mother's Day? Part of me still clung to the idea that maybe this was from Aubrey, that it was something innocent. Maybe she wanted to surprise me. Maybe the holes were just packaging nonsense and I was letting Drexler's old field training get to me. But another part of me, quieter, colder, knew better. I thought back to the last real conversation we had. 3 weeks ago. She called about her credit card bill. It had gone over again and she wanted to use my account just this once to make the minimum. I told her no, that I couldn't keep doing this, that I wasn't a bank. She hung up before I finished the sentence. The next morning, I noticed a $140 charge on my Visa from a place I didn't recognize, Wild Scales & Co. in Savannah. I'd asked Drexler. He didn't know it. I texted Aubrey. She didn't reply. I figured it was a mistake, or I'd forgotten something. I let it go. But now that name haunted me. I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app. The charge was still there. 3 weeks ago, billed at 8:13 a.m. Wild Scales & Co.'s a pet store, one that specialized in exotic animals, reptiles. I showed Drexler the screen. He didn't say a word, just looked at me like all the dots were connecting in real time. Then it came again. That sound, not rustling, not paper. A hiss, slow, low, unmistakable. My body locked in place. My feet wanted to move but couldn't. Drexler reacted faster. He pulled his phone and dialed 911, gave our address, explained the situation with crisp efficiency. The dispatcher said officers were en route and they'd send animal control too. I stood in the hallway, eyes fixed on the laundry room door, heart thudding against my ribs. My hands were shaking, not from fear of the snake, but from something far worse. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a prank. This was a message from my daughter. And on this Mother's Day, the only thing she sent me was something that hissed. The police arrived quickly, followed closely by an officer from animal control. The moment Drexler stepped outside to greet them, I moved to the hallway mirror, brushed back my hair, and practiced breathing like I wasn't unraveling from the inside. They brought in the gloves, the padded clamps, the secure crate. All done with a cool efficiency that should have comforted me, but didn't. They opened the box carefully on the same laundry room floor where it had sat like a landmine all morning. When the top flap folded back, everyone stiffened. Coiled tightly in a pile of shredded newspaper was a California king snake, maybe 3 feet long, thick-bodied with sharp black and white bands, like rings of warning. It wasn't venomous, the officer said, but it didn't need to be. These snakes were known to bite, to lash out fast. It wasn't the kind of creature you gave as a gift, not unless the gift was fear. Tucked beside it was a single card, not sealed, just a small rectangle of cardstock lavender with a gold border. On the front, Happy Mother's Day. Inside, in slanted handwriting I could recognize with my eyes closed, "Hope you're not too startled." There was no last name, but there didn't need to be. My knees nearly gave out. I sat on the nearest stool, my hand over my mouth, eyes fixed on the card like it might sprout teeth. Drexler knelt beside me gently, taking the card from my lap before the officers bagged it for evidence. "It's okay," he whispered. "We'll deal with it." The officer asked a few questions. Had I received threats before? Had there been past incidents? I said no. I said nothing, like this had ever happened. But even as I said it, my brain was scanning old conversations, rewinding scenes that hadn't made sense until now. 2 months ago, a dinner. Quillen Aubrey's fiancé leaned back in his chair, swirling a glass of bourbon. We'd been arguing about money, again. He laughed too loud, then smirked. "One day you're going to get a gift you won't forget, Margot." He'd said it like a joke. I'd laughed politely. Drexler had excused himself. It hadn't felt right then. And now it felt like a warning I'd been too blind to heed. I hadn't told Drexler about that moment. I didn't want to sound paranoid, or worse, cruel. Suspecting your future son-in-law of something so sinister wasn't something you said out loud, but now I picked up my phone and called the one person who could either confirm or destroy what I was beginning to believe. Aubrey answered on the second ring. "Mom." Her voice was bright, forced. I didn't say hello. I didn't ask how she was. "Did you send me something today?" There was a pause. A beat too long. What, like a gift? "No. I mean, what are you talking about?" "A box with a snake and a card." Her voice pitched higher. "A snake? Are you serious? Why would I send you a snake?" That's when I heard it. Faint, in the background. A laugh, not hers, his. Quillen, soft, dragging, like someone enjoying a private joke. I didn't speak. I just listened. Then she added, "Mom, why would you think I'd do something like that? Because your fiancé thinks hurting me is funny." I wanted to scream. "Because you've changed into someone I don't recognize. Because I raised you better than this, didn't I?" I ended the call. Without a word to Drexler, I left the kitchen and walked into the study. Closed the door, sat in the dark. I'd spent so long trying to believe Aubrey's sharp edges were just stress, just survival. But this wasn't stress. This was precision. Deliberate. This wasn't anger. This was punishment. The next morning, Drexler printed 3 months of bank statements and spread them across the dining table. He didn't ask permission. He knew me well enough to know I'd say no, that I'd rather not know. But we were past that now. Page after page, he highlighted charges I couldn't explain, transactions I didn't remember, places I'd never shopped. A $220 charge from a crypto site in New Jersey, $89 from an app called Quick Spin Casino, multiple installments to some pay-later platform called Clarivana. None of it sounded familiar. All of it was under my name. Then came the bigger one, $6,500 from a lending agency in Atlanta, a loan I never applied for. Taken out just before Christmas. I hadn't bought anything big last winter. In fact, I remembered cutting back on everything. So what was this? Drexler clicked open his laptop. "Look," he said, turning the screen toward me. It was an email inbox. Not mine, but one set up under a near-identical name. My full name, middle initial included. The profile picture was a stock photo of a butterfly. The email domain was obscure. He scrolled through the sent messages, applications, confirmations, even a scanned copy of my driver's license. A file name I recognized. It was the one I'd emailed Aubrey last year when she said she needed to verify her FAFSA. My stomach turned. "She used your ID to co-sign," Drexler said. "She's been borrowing in your name." I said nothing. I couldn't. My ears were ringing. My fingers went numb. It wasn't just the money. It was the lies. The little ones that grew like vines until they wrapped around everything. I thought back to the time I sold Thomas's vintage Camaro, the one he'd rebuilt piece by piece to pay for Aubrey's second semester after her divorce. She said she needed it to finish her degree. Later, I found out she dropped out 3 weeks in. The money went toward a condo lease she broke in 6 months. I told myself then that she was lost, not malicious. Now I wasn't so sure. Drexler leaned forward, his voice low. "This is identity fraud, Margot. It's not just about money anymore. If we don't act now, they'll be back. And not with snakes, with lawsuits, with debt collectors, with ruin." I walked to the hall closet, pulled down the old accordion file labeled estate planning. At the very back was the unsigned draft of my will, the one that left the house to Aubrey. She'd always assumed it was hers. I'd never corrected her. I took the draft and dropped it into the shredder, page by page. The machine whirred like a slow final breath. "If you send a snake instead of a card," I said quietly, "then you'll hear from my lawyer instead of your mother." The message came just before noon, right when the sun hit the kitchen window, in a way that used to make the old wood floors glow. My phone buzzed once. I hesitated, then picked it up. Aubrey. Her name on the screen still tugged something inside me, even now. I opened the message. It was long, almost theatrical in its tone. She talked about how hurt she was, how Drexler had poisoned me against her, how the distance between us was breaking her heart. The words bled into each other, crafted like poetry, except I knew the verses too well. I'd read them before in different versions through the years. But this time, it ended differently. "If you push me out, I don't know if I can let Mia and Theo keep seeing you. It's too confusing for them. Emma and Theo will forget your face." That last line read over and over again, landed like a bruise across my ribs. I sat down. The chair felt miles beneath me. I thought of Mia with her watercolor set always pressing the brush too hard against the paper until the bristles splayed. How she used to sit beside me on the porch tongue between her teeth, eyes squinting at the trees like they were masterpieces waiting to be named. I thought of Theo curled up on my lap, warm and breathing slow, his small body heavy with sleep as we watched cartoons, his little hand always finding mine without looking. They weren't tools, they weren't weapons. But in her message, Aubrey had turned them into both. I asked myself the question I'd been avoiding. If I give in, do I keep them? Or do I just teach them that love means submission? Drexler walked in, saw the phone still in my hand. "You okay?" I handed it to him, read the last line. He did, his face darkened, jaw tightening. "I have something I need you to hear," he said. He pulled out an old laptop, my old one, the one Aubrey used to borrow when hers broke, or when she needed to print something real quick. Months ago, after a string of incidents too subtle to report, but too suspicious to ignore, Drexler had installed a background recorder. It only activated when certain profiles logged in. He hit play on a file labeled with a date from 3 weeks back. Aubrey's voice first. "I don't know if she's going to budge this time." Then Quillen's smooth, arrogant. "She will. Just dangle the kids again. Worked last time, didn't it, Silence?" Then softly, Aubrey again. "Yeah, she always wants to be the savior. She can't help herself." I pressed pause. My heart beat in my throat. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But instead, I stood and walked to the window. The yard was quiet. The grass, the flowers, none of it knew what was breaking inside me. Back at the table, Drexler cued another recording. This one was more damning. Aubrey again. She's still got the house in her name. I keep telling her it's for tax reasons, but once it's in mine, we're good. Quillen laughed. Exactly. She hands over the deed we refinance, and then she can watch it from a distance, like a sentimental museum. A long silence. Then Aubrey, barely above a whisper, "She'll do it. She always does." I closed the laptop. No more maybe, no more wondering. This wasn't desperation. This was strategy. I opened my email and drafted a message to Cordelia Knox, my lawyer. Subject estate update. Immediate action required, body Cordelia. I would like to set up an educational trust for Mia and Theo with full control under independent trustees. Please also begin the legal process to remove Aubrey Graves from any and all assets currently held in my name. I'm ready to move forward. Margot Ellery. I hit send. My hands were steady. Cordelia's office smelled like bergamot and lemon, clean and expensive. The type of place where decisions didn't just get made, they got sealed in vaults and notarized with precision. I sat across from her with the sunlight spilling in behind me. Drexler stood near the door, arms crossed, saying nothing, letting the silence speak for him. We went through the documents slowly. I signed each page with deliberate strokes. The new will, the trust agreement for Mia and Theo, language stating that any claim from Aubrey would be legally contested, all assets frozen pending further notice. I'd also recommend we file for a restraining order, Cordelia said, gently folding her hands. We've handled similar cases. If she escalates, she already has, I said. That afternoon, back at home, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Moments later, a voicemail popped in. I played it on speaker. Hi, this is Emily from Wild Scales & Cohen. We're calling about a recent attempted order for your address. It was flagged because our system registered police involvement at that location. Just wanted to confirm you didn't authorize a second delivery of exotic livestock. Correct if you could give us a call back. I ended the message. They tried again, I said. Drexler's voice was flat. Of course they did. The next day, Drexler's car was parked outside the rec center while he helped a neighbor move some supplies. When he returned, the driver's side window had been shattered. A brick inside the car wrapped in a torn grocery bag. On it, a note, "Tough guy, former FBI. Still this easy." He handed it to the officers who responded. Fingerprints came back as non-conclusive, but one partial matched Quion from a minor arrest years back. Not enough to press charges, just enough to confirm what we already knew. Later that night, I sat at the kitchen table, a new notebook open before me. Not a diary, a record. For Mia and Theo. So when they grew up and asked what happened, they'd have more than rumors. I wrote their names in block letters on the first page. Underneath, in careful script, for when you're ready to know who I really was. I didn't call Aubrey baby or sweetheart anymore in those pages. I used her full name, Aubrey Ellery Graves. That's how I knew I'd crossed the point of no return. That same night, just past 10 p.m., my phone rang again. This time I recognized the number. Aubrey. I answered. I don't know why. Maybe part of me still wanted to believe in some thread worth saving. She was crying. "Mom, please," she said between sobs. "I don't know what's happening anymore. Can we just talk, just you and me, before it gets worse?" Behind her voice, barely audible, another voice, his voice cut through. "Just keep her on. Soften her up." I didn't reply. I listened. And then calmly, I hung up. I blocked the number, activated the emergency lock screen Drexler installed. I turned off the lights. I whispered to myself, tonight, I don't choose to be her mother. I choose to be the last door that the truth won't get past. The day began like any other. I watered the lilacs near the back fence and trimmed the rosemary that had grown wild along the steps. The sun was soft, not harsh yet, and the morning breeze carried that old spring scent that reminded me of peace, fragile borrowed peace. I had just finished writing a letter to Cordelia asking to amend the scholarship fund. I wanted a new clause, added if Mia or Theo ever needed emergency medical care. The fund could step in no matter what the parents claimed. It was a quiet act of love folded into legal language. Drexler had gone into town to finalize security paperwork, motion detectors, perimeter cameras, a reinforced mailbox. We were building walls, yes, but also breathing space. I was trying to live lightly without fear. I really was. Then the doorbell rang. I froze. There, sitting neatly on the front mat, was a small box wrapped in pale blue paper with a silver ribbon. A note card, blank side up, lay tucked beneath the bow. I didn't touch it. I didn't panic. I called Drexler. He said he was 10 minutes away. I stayed by the kitchen window, watching the box as if it might blink. When Drexler pulled in, he didn't even get out of the car at first. "There's a car across the street," he said. "Haven't seen it before." It was an old Saturn dull silver parked just close enough to see our driveway. He wrote down the plate. The police arrived 10 minutes later. They didn't need coaxing this time. They knew our address. The officer on duty, a woman named Ferris, wore latex gloves as she approached the box. Inside was no snake, no live thing at all. It was a porcelain doll, delicate, detailed, and cracked, clean down the temple. One eye hung slightly askew. Its arms were outstretched, and clutched in one tiny hand was a strip of paper. "If you think you've won, think again." Ferris looked at us with something different in her eyes this time. Not sympathy, not confusion, readiness. "This qualifies as a Class B threat under psychological harassment," she said. "And given the prior incident, I'm recommending you file a full criminal complaint. They took the box, the note, the doll, all of it." Back inside, Drexler cross-checked the license plate. It didn't exist, at least not legally. The plate number belonged to a vehicle stolen from a junkyard in Georgia last year. Whoever was watching us had planned for cover. Cordelia met us that afternoon. This time, there were no measured conversations. I signed the formal complaint. Fraud, identity theft, financial abuse, psychological harassment. We also filed for an extended protection order. Not just no contact, but physical distance. Aubrey and Quillen were barred from coming within 500 feet of our home, our vehicles, my place of worship, or any location where I received medical care. Cordelia looked at me over the papers. "If they show up again," she said, "this isn't a family matter anymore. This becomes criminal prosecution. No more gray areas." I nodded. That night, I stood on the porch, looking out over the dark curve of our street. Wind rustled the leaves. Somewhere a dog barked. It all looked the same, but I was not the same. I whispered to myself, steady as a gavel. "You sent a second box, Aubrey. That means I get to send the first subpoena." It was a Thursday when the phone rang again. The caller ID read private number. My stomach tensed. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Hello," I said. "Bangoai," a small voice whispered. "It's me, Mia." I borrowed Mommy's phone. I just wanted to say, "I miss you." I closed my eyes. The kitchen dimmed around me. Light narrowed into a sharp line across the tile. "Mia," I said softly. "I miss you too, baby." She sniffled. Then she said something that froze the air in my lungs. "Mommy says you want to put snakes in my backpack. Is that true?" I leaned against the counter. My fingers dug into the edge. "No, sweetheart," I said. "That's not true at all." There was a click, then silence. I stood there a long while, the receiver still in my hand. The next day, I wrote a letter. It wasn't an apology. It was a record, a document. The full timeline of everything, photos of the box, receipts, voice recordings, transcripts of bank transactions, printed emails. I sealed it in an envelope labeled Mia and Theo, when you turn 18. I placed it in the fireproof safe behind the linen shelf where I kept old tax records and my mother's wedding ring. If you're reading this, the last line read, "Then I no longer have to stay silent." 2 days later, Cordelia called. "The lawsuit has been moved to preliminary court," she said. "Quillen's been subpoenaed on 3 charges: identity misrepresentation, financial abuse, and criminal intimidation." Aubrey didn't show. Instead, her lawyer submitted a statement blaming it all on post-divorce trauma and mental instability. It was all procedural. But Cordelia assured me we've built enough to move forward. Even if the DA doesn't press charges, your civil suit can proceed, and the financial blockades are in place. That same week, a letter arrived from the Ellery Learning Foundation, a nonprofit I had once approached for partnership, back when I was first dreaming of the scholarship fund. They were ready to back the Mia and Theo Fund, now offering independent oversight and full legal insulation from parental interference. It meant that even if Aubrey tried to claw at it in the future, she would hit legal steel. I said yes. A few days later, Drexler and I took a walk through the neighborhood community garden, the one I used to avoid. The sun was setting. I brought a journal with me and sat on a bench near the marigolds. I opened to the first page and wrote, "Sometimes being a mother means knowing when to stand up, even when your hands still shake." As we returned home, the doorbell rang. No box this time. Just a single envelope slid beneath the doorframe. Inside was a photo. Mia in her tiny cap and gown, smiling wide at her pre-K graduation. No note, no sender. I held it gently the way you hold something that might crumble under breath. I placed it in a wooden frame on my nightstand, and I whispered, "I'll wait for you, baby. But I won't go back."